to start the bind off, and this process is the same for working flat and working in the round. First, cast on 2 stitches at the beginning of the work in your bind off row or round. And we'll use knitted cast on. That works like this. You insert the tip of the right needle into the first stitch, then wrap it with the yarn, pull it through just like knitting, but instead of slipping this stitch off the needle, we place the new stitch on the needle. So this way we cast on 1 stitch. And now let's do it again to cast on 1 more stitch, because we need 2 stitches at the beginning of the work. Here we go. And you can do it using yarn in your holding yarn in your right hand or left hand. It's totally up to you. Doesn't make any difference at all. Now knit 1 stitch. It would be the last stitch that we cast on, this one. Simply knit it and slip it off the left needle. And then insert the tip of the right needle from right to left into the next 2 stitches. It would be 1 extra stitch, the stitch that we cast on, and 1 stitch of the work, just like this. And then you wrap the needle, the right needle with the yarn, and knit these 2 stitches together through the back loop, like this, and slip them off the left needle. Return these 2 stitches back to the left needle by slipping them one by one this way without twisting them. So you insert the tip of the left needle from left to right into the stitch and slip it from the right needle. And that's basically it. That's how we proceed. We knit 1 stitch, then we knit 2 stitches together through the back loop, and return these 2 stitches to the left needle. And we continue until we have 2 stitches left on the needles. So I'm going to do this little trick once again, and then slip the stitches back to the left needle. So here we go. We have 2 stitches on the left needle. I put the right needle aside, we don't need it for now. And let's take a look at the edging. See, it has basically 3 sets of braids. It has a chain over here, it has a chain at the back, and it has a nice twisted braid over here at the very top. So it looks really, really nice. How do we finish it off? So when you have 2 stitches left, cut the yarn leaving a small tail, about 15 centimeters, 6 inches long. About this long, and then thread the tail into the wool needle. When you are binding off stitches of a project that is worked flat like this one, then finishing off is quite easy. You simply slip both stitches from the knitting needle to the wool needle like this, then pull the yarn through and pull the tail really tight to tighten the last stitch. And then while we have this tail on the wool needle already, we could as well just weave it in, just hide it. And that's how the bind off edge looks. When we bind off stitches in a project that is worked in the round, we do this same thing when it comes to the bind off itself, but we'll do some extra steps to finish off the bind off edge. So see, I bound off all stitches and I left these 2 last stitches on the left needle, and I also left a tail. I already cut it. So I thread this tail into a wool needle, and here's what we do. Basically, we want to kind of graft these 2 stitches to the beginning of the bind off edge, to this part of the bind off edge, because we want to close this gap and we want to make the bind off edge look like it's seamless, as if it's seamless. So here's what we do. First thing, we insert the wool needle from right to left into the first stitch on the left needle like this, and then we slip it off the left needle and pull the yarn through like this. And then we find the first stitch of the bind off edge at the beginning of the bind off edge. So it would be right here, and the first stitch would be the one that is at the very right of the bind-off edge, and I would say it would be this one. And then we insert the wool needle under both legs of this stitch, like this, and pull the yarn through. Then we go back to the end of the bind-off edge and then find the stitch that we've already worked into the first step, and we go top down into that stitch that is over here, and then we go from right to left into the last stitch on the left needle. Take the needle out, put it aside, and then pull the yarn through these both stitches. Now it's time to go back to the beginning of the cast on of the bind-off edge, and we find the next stitch of the bind-off edge and go under both legs of that stitch. So I would say it would be this one over here. So I go under both legs of this stitch and pull the yarn through. Don't pull the yarn too tight. We want to form kind of a V over here because we don't want it to be visible, or we want it to be as invisible as possible. So make sure the strand that you leave over here is about the same as the strands that are in the rest of the stitches. So it's about as long as the rest of the stitches. And now insert the needle from the top down into that last stitch and then through the work. See, I'm going right through the work around the bind-off edge, and then pull the yarn through, just like this. Again, don't pull too tight, just make this stitch about as big as the rest of the stitches. It won't be invisible, but it won't be too visible. Let's put it this way. So now we go to the wrong side of the work, make an extra stitch to secure the yarn, go into that loop, pull it tight, and then weave in the end. Just like this. This is our beautiful braided bind-off edge.